Good morning and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to lesson number 2 on our unit on personal banking and transactions. All right, so the last unit we learned a little bit about what the different checking accounts were and why someone might use the various accounts and the importance of keeping good balances and so on and so forth. So today what we're going to look at is we're going to look at using a checking account, because chances are that's what you're first going to open up as your first bank account, right? Now, some of you all might already have a savings account, but again, remember, the purpose of a savings account is to save and put away money. They don't want you really withdrawing from that account, right? Withdraw means take away money. We learned that in our terms, right? So we're going to look at using a checking account today, and we're going to look at filling out a deposit slip, okay, just in case you have something that's not direct deposited that needs to go into the account. We're going to look at writing a check and, of course, using your debit card and what that means, all right? So let's get started. So deposit slip. A deposit slip is usually required if a transaction occurs at a banking location. In other words, if you put money into the bank, right, a deposit slip is going to have to go along with it, okay? And the reason is because the bank has rules they have to follow. You just can't hand them a check and say, I want to deposit this, right? It needs a deposit slip because every transaction needs to be accounted for. They have an accounting process they have to abide by various banking rules and laws, all right? So it needs a deposit slip. It also works as an order, right? An order says, I want to deposit this into my account and I want to receive this amount, or I want this money to go somewhere else, right? Just like you would order something from a waiter or waitress at a restaurant, right? You're making the order happen, okay? Now, the electronic deposits, in the event that you have, say, like direct deposit from your bank, do not require a deposit slip because there's electronic record to back that up. Now, when you fill out a deposit slip, there are several areas to keep in mind, right? You're going to have the date of deposit. Obviously, you put whatever on there. We'll look at that, right? You're going to have an area if there's cash being deposited. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. You're going to have a list of checks that are being deposited. If you do have a single check, that's fine. If not, you have a whole list. You have cash being received by the account holder, so any cash being returned to you off the checks. And then, of course, the signature and the total deposit, right? That way the bank or the teller knows what's going on and knows what you're wanting to do, okay? You can't just tell them, I want to do this and get this back. They need to have that on record. All right, so now, a typical deposit slip, this is what usually they look like, all right? You'll see sometimes your name, your street, city, state, and zip. If not, it'll be a blank space up there, and that's not a problem, okay? As long as you have your checking information down here, right? These are the MICR numbers, the magnetic ink character recognition numbers that are scanned by the various devices at the banking institution, right? The date goes here. It could be long form or short form, all right? That means you could actually spell out, say today is October the 21st. You could put October, spell it out, 2/1/2020 if you want to. If not, you put 10/20/2020 on there, whatever you want to put on there, right? Now notice here it says sign here for cash being received, okay? Cash received if required. So if you're not receiving cash, you don't need to sign there. However, if you are receiving cash, you do need to sign there. Why? That's their rules, right? Additionally, some banks will take deposits from somebody who's not you, okay? As long as it has your information on there, and that is a protection for them, okay? They'll be glad to put money into the account for you, not always putting out. But that depends on the bank, all right? Now, over here, we have some boxes here, right? You have, notice you have the cents area, okay? You have a row for your pennies, your dimes, or your tens, so your ones, your hundreds, your tens group, right? And then you have your dollar amount, plus a little triangle indicating the thousand line, the comma line on your numbers, right? And then 2 extra marks, all right? So if cash being deposited, it goes up here. It says cash. You have an arrow here, cash. How much cash are you depositing? If you are putting in 0, you can either line through that or put a 0 and a 0 here, all right? Then you're going to list your check. If you have a single check that's being deposited, you're going to put that check amount here in its total amount that it's written for. Okay, not the amount you want back or deposited, in the amount it's written for. So if you have a check for $152.19, you put 152.19, all right? And then if you have more than one check, it goes here, okay? If you have 2 or 3. Now, if you have more than 3, there's actually space on the back of the slip, okay, to fill out additional checks, and you would put that total there, total from other side, okay? That's what this represents here. So if you have more than one, you put the total over there. Now, if you're thinking, Mr. C, who's going to have multiple checks? Businesses, okay, that have multiple checks, okay, for transactions for the day. All right, so that's why that goes there, all right? You're going to put the subtotal here. The subtotal is everything here added up, okay? Then, if you are going to take cash out of the transactions, if you're not receiving cash, right, not turning in cash, and you've got all checks here, and you're receiving cash off of that, all right, you're going to put that amount here, okay? And then, of course, you're going to put your total deposit. So it's the subtotal less this. So let me cover this again. If you have cash being deposited, here, if not, 0 or a dash, okay? List of checks, okay? If you have a single check, it goes here. Second check, it goes there. If you have more than 3, you add up the total and add it here, okay? The subtotal is everything up here added together, okay? Less cash received means the cash coming back to you, and the total deposit, all right? You got to make sure that your numbers add up because the tellers will call you out on it. Don't be the person who gets embarrassed like that, all right? So do the math, all right? All right, so that's a deposit slip. Now, when it comes time for spending your cash, okay, and spending the money out of your account, obviously, you want to make sure that you're spending what you have in there and don't overspend. We'll talk about that a little bit later, okay? So when it comes to using your checking account, you can write checks. We're going to talk about how to fill out a check later, okay? You can do that to pay bills, especially when they don't have an electronic system to pay their bills, right, or to pay the account. However, if you're using an ATM or debit card, there's a couple things that you need to know about it, all right? Whenever you use it to purchase something or to make a transaction, it will be a withdrawal from the account. That's why they call them debit cards. Remember, we said that debits usually pull money out of the account, all right? They pull money out of the account, one side of the accounting column compared to the other side of the accounting column, all right? They call it a debit card because it pulls money. It's easy to debit the account itself, right? All right, they can be done at various point-of-sale kiosks. That's nothing different than the counter at Walmart or at Chick-fil-A or at Publix or what have you. It can be done online or anywhere accepted, all right? If you have a Visa or MasterCard logo, anywhere that has a Visa or MasterCard should be able to take that card, okay? And they should be able to use that. And that money will come out of the checking account itself, okay? It's not a credit card, okay? Credit card is something different. We'll talk about that later, okay? Now, I'll talk about it now, actually. Debit card transactions versus credit card transactions. All right, here's the deal. All right. Sometimes when you present a card, they're going to ask you, is this credit or is it debit card? All right. In reality, it doesn't matter. You can ring it up credit or debit. Okay. Here's the difference. And this is something important to know. Most high schoolers and some college students don't know this. So a little bit of extra education for you guys in my class, right? If you use a debit card, okay, the debit usually requires a personal identification number to put in, okay, which is fine. It's more secure, okay? However, in the event that you want to contest a transaction, you say, no, I didn't spend that, it's harder to contest it because, all right, somebody put in your personal identification number. Hey, they put your number in here, your 4-digit code, whatever that 4-digit code is, okay? They put it in there, all right? You got nothing, all right? That means the transaction's gone. However, if you choose the credit option, okay, the credit may not require a signature, all right, and it's easier to contest, okay, and it's better for overall security. So if they ever ask you credit or debit, usually say credit. Now, every once in a while, you'll get that institution that's when you put credit, it doesn't work, and that's fine, okay? It is what it is, all right? But usually, just tell them credit. All right. Now, on the business end, if you're ever running your own business, you want your customers to ring them up as debits because it costs less money, okay, overall. All right. So it costs a lower percentage off the back end or what have you, right? Credit cards usually cost a little bit higher percentage. All right. So just be cautious and aware of your account security, okay? Be cautious and aware of your account security. However, if you have a credit card that has the chip reader dealie in it, you just simply stick it in and it does it for you. You don't have anything to worry about, all right? And there you go, all right? So I hope that makes it clear as mud for y'all as far as using a debit card, all right? All right, speaking of which, why do they call it credit cards as opposed to debit cards? Well, that means a bank is giving you a line of credit. Okay, that's why they call it a credit card. All right, that means they're saying, hey, we give you up to $1,000. You could use up to $1,000 on this card, or keep a running balance of up to $1,000 if you choose to. If you choose not to, no big deal. We don't care. But that money is available to you. All right, line of credit. Okay, that's why they call them credit cards. Somebody's giving you the credit to do something. They trust your credit history. We talked about that off of the last unit itself. All right. Overall, just be careful. All right. All right. So notes about checks and check writing. Yes, checks are still used by many personal and business people. Okay. For personal transactions or business transactions, right? It saves on expenses. Okay. How does it save on expenses? Well, because if I'm going to another business, okay, and I use a check or write a check, that business doesn't have to pay the fee for using the credit or the debit card, all right? And it helps secure the transaction to the payee. Pretty cool, right? Awesome, right? So the only cost is involved in the actual check itself, right? To produce the check or to get that check from the bank or whatever institution you get your check from, okay? Pretty simple there, right? It is a contractual order to the bank, all right? It's saying, hey, when you write a check to somebody, you're making an order, a contract saying, if you take this to my bank, you are guaranteed to get paid this amount of money. And bank, when you receive this check, I order you or direct you to pay this person, right, the amount written on the check. All right, it's a contract, okay? It is, because it is a contract, it is bound by state law, okay? That means if you write a fraudulent check or a check more than you can, for more than what you can cover, that's not good. You are in violation of state laws. And they are heavily controlled and regulated. And in some cases, you can be in violation of federal laws, depending on how much the check is written for, okay? So up to a certain amount, it's covered by the state. Beyond that certain amount, it's covered by the feds, okay? And it goes under federal law, all right? It also gives extended and limited time for tender and transactions, okay? That means if grandpa sends you a check in the mail, okay, at Thanksgiving time, and you're going to get that and open that card on Christmas, okay, they're still going to honor that check when you bring it there or to the bank, okay? Even though it was written a while ago, that's extended time for tender, okay? If you bring it to a store, though, usually it's transacted pretty quickly, like a debit card, okay? Happens almost instantaneously, all right? So keep that in mind. Some businesses are really smart if they put a notice on the check itself, not valid beyond 90 days or 45 days or whatever their discretion is, right? It is very smart for businesses to make sure that notice is on there because you don't want transactions appearing 2 years later and you're going, when did I write this? Okay. So you want to make sure that you have that notification on there because sometimes those can bite you in the tail. And Mr. C has a couple stories on that. All right. Notes on checks and check writing, right? Sometimes they're tendered electronically, so they're handled just like credit cards and debit cards. They come out of the account instantaneously, all right? And then, of course, there's various bank rules and regulations in regard to that. I think I said something about that. There is some security to help prevent or to help induce and encourage the integrity of the transaction, right? In other words, it helps prevent fraud. One of those things is the MICR system. I mentioned that word with the deposit slip there. You saw those little funky numbers written onto the deposit slip. Those are magnetic ink character recognition numbers. You put those through the little magnetic scanner and it verifies, hey, these numbers are on here. Let me read the numbers and let me verify the bank exists. Great, the bank exists. Great, does this account exist at that bank? Yes or no? And then it allows that transaction to either happen or not happen, right? Never, ever, ever, never trust a post-dated check. That means a check that is written for a future date. That is illegal. And if a business ever asks you to write a post-dated check, tell them no. That is illegal. Okay, and that's bound by state law. You cannot do that. Okay, good ethical business will not ask you to write a post-dated check. All right, so just keep that in mind, please. All right, so how do you write a check? All right, so I got a couple of samples here. Well, a sample of one check. So what we're going to do is we got an imaginary check writing here, right? And first thing that we're doing here is, well, let's consider the check itself. We have a bill from the, quote, My Town Water Company. That's the name of the business that is being paid in this transaction, right? And the amount of the bill is $18.71. that's pretty cheap, okay? Now you'll notice here that the area here is blank, and that's fine. Sometimes you will have your name and address up here, and there's nothing wrong with having your name and address up there, right? In fact, some businesses may not take your check if it doesn't have that information there, and that's fine, okay? Some people like to leave their driver's license and personal identification numbers up there. I choose not to for security reasons. That's a preference. You got to make that decision on your own. Okay. Now notice here you have these numbers written in a funky text or funky font there. That is your MICR numbers, or your magnetic ink character recognition numbers. Usually, this number right here is the routing number. The routing number says, okay, which bank does this go to? Where are we routing this transaction from? All right. And that might go to your bank. Now, some banks might have multiple routing numbers. Okay. And that all depends on various transactions and purchases and so on and so forth with other banks or what have you, and that's fine, okay? This number is the account number, the account associated with the check itself, and this number right here is the check number, and you'll see up here that there's also a check number, and they'll always match, but of course you got this person's hand in the way, so there you go, right? So the date line, all right, the date, you could see that this transaction occurs on July 13th of 2015. Again, you're never going to put a future date on there. You're only putting the date that you have on that check, right? Now, if you're asking, Mr. C, what about if we have, we know we're getting paid on Friday and we want to go ahead and cover this bill and send it in the mail. Can't we just write the future date on there? Nope. 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 State law says you must only write a check for the amount that you can cover at the time it is written, all right? And you got to plan for it. It takes responsibility. So nope, don't do that. That's illegal, all right? So the date, include the month, date, and the year, okay? There you go. All right. Pay to the order of. This is the proper name of the company or the recipient or the entity in which you are writing. The proper name, all right? If you're going to Publix, you're not going to write pay to the order of groceries. Okay, if you're paying the water company, you're not paying to the order of water bill. Okay, it is My Town Water Company. That's the name that we just established up here in the instructions. Okay, so you put the proper name on there, and if you don't know how to spell it, ask the person behind the counter. Okay, so there you go. All right, that plain and simple. All right, if you write a check to a personal individual, you put their full name on there. To a business, the proper name of the business. All right, not water bill or groceries or electric bill. Okay, that's not who the company is. All right. The next one, all right, here's where I diverge a little bit from this instructions, okay? And you'll see here in just a minute, okay? Note here, the 101 and check 101, those should always match, okay? So you got My Town Water Company, the date. Now, the dollar amount, this is in the dollar box, written in dollars and cents in numbers format, even if it is in zeros. So if it has zeros, you just don't write, in this case, 1800, you write 18, all right? Now, they're putting a little dot here for the penny sign, okay? And you can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. However, read this little note from Mr. C down here. To help prevent fraud, in other words, people from unscrupulously modifying and manipulating your check, it is best to use a fraction for any penny amounts. So you would write, instead of 18.71, okay, you would write 1871/fraction, right, over 100. Why 100? Because there's 100 pennies in every dollar, okay, and that helps prevent the fraud. Why does that help prevent the fraud? Well, let me ask you this, ladies and gentlemen. How easy is it to write a 0 here and then change this decimal point over 1, all right? Got to be really careful. Use that fraction. It's recommended. If you don't, that's on you, okay? But I recommend that. All right, next thing. The same thing, right? The long form written amount, right? This is a verification of this number, 18 and 71 over 100, okay? And again, that fraction helps prevent fraud, okay? So $18 and blah, blah, blah cents. And notice this little line here. Why would you include this little dash here to the end? Well, if you're saying, Mr. C, it helps prevent somebody from writing in information after that, you're absolutely right, okay? And again, if you're writing a check for an even amount, you're just not going to write 18, okay? Because they could put 1,800 if they want to, or 18,000 if they want to, right? Well, no, you want to protect yourself when it comes to writing a check, right? So 18 and 71 100. Again, that fraction form here, and I also recommend that fraction form there. These numbers must match, okay? These numbers must match. If not, the check will not be validated and be able to be cashed by the individual itself. All right. And then the memo or for. This is an optional item, 100% optional. You don't have to put it. Okay. Now notice what this person did. Okay. They put an account number. Okay. Now does every person and every business have an account number for you? No. Chances are, if it's the water company, they're providing you with the water services, they probably have multiple people that they serve, right? Each person gets their own account, an account number, okay? So thusly, it's a really good idea to write that account number on there, because you sure would hate to be putting in money into somebody else's account, right? That happened to Mr. C, okay? I paid my bill, and it was mistakenly paid for somebody else's, and I got a late notice. I'm like, well, they must have received it. I didn't think anything about it. The next day I came home and my lights were off. I'm like, why? So I immediately made a phone call to the power company, gave them my check information, and like, oh, we are so sorry. We'll get that power on right away for you. We accidentally put that somewhere else. Okay? So make sure that you put the account number on there if you have one associated with the bill that you are paying, okay? If not, don't worry about it. Some people do put a for or a memo section in there, like if they're paying rent to somebody, you could put for July 2020 rent or October 2020 rent, okay? That's fine. You can put that for a birthday gift, for a gift, whatever it's used for, you can put that. And that's a memo for yourself or to the person that you are paying, all right? And then finally, you want to make sure that you have a signature of the person who was authorized to write a check on the account, all right? If it's anybody else's signature, it cannot be deposited or it cannot be cashed in, okay? And it cannot be transacted, so it needs to be someone authorized to use the account, all right? Pretty simple there, all right? So that brings me to the end of this lesson. Note here that in today's activity, you have 3 checks that are to be written, and I provided you 3 blank checks. I would like for you to fill these out electronically the best you can, and go ahead and get these written in the amount, for the amount to whom they are written. And we will go over those together. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that brings me to the end of lesson 2. Good luck with the activity, and we'll catch you for lesson 3.